In the mid-2000s, before acquiring Marvel and Star Wars, Disney was looking for a way to capture the preteen male audience. This led to not only the purchase of properties like Power Rangers, but also big screen adaptations of Pirates of the Caribbean, Chronicles of Narnia, and The Prince of Persia. Disney was really looking for the next big thing, and that led to an attempted revival of a cult property from the early 1980s. In today's video, we enter the mainframe and look at the history and lore of the digital world of Tron. Tron was first conceived in the mid-1970s by animator Steven Lisberger. He, like many others of that time, was blown away by Pong and decided that a story featuring the world of video games would make for a great movie. Lisberger created his own production company, and an early version of the character of Tron would be featured in an animated sequence used to promote rock radio stations. This prototype Tron was yellow, designed to look like the Cylon Centurion from Battlestar Galactica, and wielded two exploding discs. The film, in early stages of development, was meant to be bookended by live-action sequences, while all the digitally set scenes would be animated. The decision was then made to utilize a combination of live-action footage with backlit animation alongside early computer-generated imagery meant to make the world of Tron look more futuristic and completely unique from anything else of that era. Although Lisberger originally planned to produce the film fully independently, the ambitious technical requirements meant that once money ran out, they turned to major studios in order to finish the film. After rejections from Columbia, MGM, and WB, the team found themselves at Disney's door. Disney was struggling in the early 1980s and saw great potential in Tron as their answer to Star Wars. Full production on the film began in 1981 after some Disney-mandated rewrites, which made the film more serious in tone and removed specific technical-sounding dialogue in order to avoid confusing and overwhelming audiences. The first Tron film follows former Encom employee and software developer Kevin Flynn. Flynn seeks to prove that he is the true designer of several games stolen by current Encom executive vice president Ed Dillinger. What Flynn doesn't know, however, is that Encom has been taken over by a virtual intelligence known as the Master Control Program. Once Flynn's former colleagues, Alan Bradley and Laura Baines, realize he's been hacking into Encom, they recruit him to help activate Alan's program Tron, which was designed to combat the MCP, Master Control Program. And right there, you have the perfect setup for a hacking-based heist film. But things, of course, go awry once Flynn is inside and ends up being transported into the virtual world of the Encom mainframe. And this is where the world of Tron gets really weird. The inhabitants of the mainframe are humanoid beings known as programs, who typically bear a physical resemblance to the person or user who created them and have different colors signifying their ranks and beliefs. The red programs have rejected their users, their followers of the MCP, essentially corrupted programs. Yellow programs are infiltrators or hacker programs. The first version of Clue created by Flynn falls into this camp. Purple programs are known as data pushers. They don't have any real higher directive, personality, or high-level intelligence. And lastly, we have blue programs, loyal to users, or perhaps a user themselves existing within the mainframe. The MCP begins corrupting programs and forcing them to relinquish their belief in the users in order to grow in power. To combat the programs who refuse to renounce their beliefs, the MCP also forces them to compete for survival in a series of gladiatorial games. The first, known simply as Ring Game, has users throwing a glowing ball back and forth in an attempt to eliminate the rings from their opponent's surface. The second game, Disc Arena, sees the programs dueling, utilizing their identity discs to be the last program standing. Then, of course, most iconically, Light Cycle, where programs pilot bikes which leave behind a trail of light known as a jet wall. Drivers strategize in order to get their opponents to crash into a jet wall while also trying to survive themselves. The light cycle is the most well-known element from Tron, and even people who are unfamiliar with the movie likely recognize the light cycle if they're in any way tapped into current culture. The sequence itself was a defining moment for not only the film, but also for pioneering the use of computer-generated imagery. The film featured 15 minutes of CGI, which, while being very primitive, does honestly still hold up given the context of how it's used. Everything exists within the digital world of the mainframe, so the untextured, chunky models honestly never look out of place. It works so well in addition to several practical techniques the filmmakers used in order to give the mainframe its unique look. All the human actors, for example, wore colorless suits, filmed in black and white on all black sets. The color and signature look of the film would come by layering colored light through the film cells in a process known as backlit animation. There wasn't a production prior to Tron that was like this, but it would set the standard for how performers would react and interact with an environment like this, which would obviously translate heavily to the use of green or blue screens much later on. Technology is completely absent in the production of Tron. Anyway, with the help of Flynn, the Tron Defense Program is able to take the fight to the MCP, which is eventually destroyed, and Flynn is returned home. This results in Flynn also getting the evidence needed to discredit Dillinger and claim his new spot as CEO of Encom, ending the story. Now, as stated before, Disney had very high hopes for Tron, putting into 3 home console video games for the Atari 2600 and Intellivision, while Midway would release 2 incredibly successful arcade games, Discs of Tron and the more well-known cabinet simply titled Tron. The film received mixed to positive reviews, with critics at the time hailing its achievement in special effects, but criticizing the overly complex story. At the box office, Tron grossed approximately $50 million against a $17 million budget, which was a moderate success and Disney's highest grossing live-action film of the time, but given their massive expectations, it was still somewhat a disappointment. This was partially due to other big blockbuster movies, including E.T., Rocky III, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and Poltergeist. Tron would be remembered over the next 2 decades as a pioneer in CGI, eventually gaining a cult following, leading to Disney's revisiting of the property in a non-canon sequel video game released in 2004 titled Tron 2.0, before eventually greenlighting a sequel to the film in the mid-2000s. Tron Legacy released in late 2010 to, once again, mixed reviews and disappointing box office numbers. There's a lot to discuss with the long production and lore elements introduced in Legacy and its supplemental material, but I'll leave that for a follow-up video if you guys are interested. There's definitely a lot we could discuss, including how it's all going to lead into the next film, Tron Ares. I'm curious to see if Ares will be the first Tron movie to truly capture attention from the mainstream audiences. Legacy has had a very positive critical reassessment in the last couple of years, but I don't know if it's quite enough to get people interested in the franchise, especially with such a divisive actor like Jared Leto in the lead. When I first watched the trailer, I thought the overall aesthetic was interesting, but I was really turned off by the inclusion of Jared Leto and also the AI now moving to the real world. But I'm still hopeful the movie will be good and that we can revisit Tron again in the near future. Those are my thoughts, though. Let me know your guys' thoughts and your earliest Tron memories. For me, it was definitely playing a ripoff of the Light Cycle game on my PC as a kid, but I look forward to reading all your comments. See you next time.